individual student needs, and an ongoing evaluation of what you're doing. You know, as a coach, the evaluation of the students and their progress as well. Not many people think about this, but no matter what you're coaching or anytime you're working with kids, what is your philosophy? And your philosophy really is based on the way that you see things and your experiences, and it's the values you give. And when you're working with kids, consciously or not, you know, you're espousing those values onto them. And this we thought was kind of neat. You really need to do a self-assessment, you know, before working with kids. Why am I coaching? What am I trying to achieve for myself? What is my motivation for coaching? What do I want to achieve with my students? And what kind of coach do I want to be? As you develop your philosophy, your coaching style and your philosophy really, more than anything, need to be matched with the developmental and learning goals of your students. That means flexibility. And hopefully over time, your philosophy will begin to evolve and shape into more of where the team is.
Having said that, I know that some coaches, some attorney coaches and teacher coaches put a lot of value on being on the same page. You can be on the same page without having exactly the same style.
That's a good point.
Kids adapt to style. And the truth is, I think for the kids that I've coached, one of the biggest things that mock trial has taught has been flexibility. One of the things you need to be good at mock trial is flexibility, both intellectually and with letting things roll, with letting bad decisions roll. So it's okay. There are some things you have to be on the same page on, but if I approach something slightly differently, if you let me as an attorney coach approach it slightly differently than you do, sometimes one student will get it one way, some will get it the other. Not every difference is a problem. And I think many of you know that, probably most of you do. But it's really interesting to me sometimes when I've been involved in coaching situations where you try and get all the coaches to be the same. It's never going to work. We're not the same people.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how far you get with that anyway. We're not going to go deep into, you know, the coaching styles. You're going to have to find your own. There's, you know, you go autocratic to democratic and different levels of those. And they're situational. There are things you don't involve kids in with the decision making. Mainly managerial, administrative, those kinds of decisions. But then there are those things too that you want increased ownership, you know, from your students. And then, of course, the experience and age of the kids, you know, makes a big difference too. So these things are here just to say that, you know, these are just some very basic, what the research shows, you know, coaching styles, and that it is very okay to have one style over another. But again, it's situational. So we'll quickly go through that. Coaching team. And I know this is one thing Ellen talked to me a lot about as we were preparing for this. It's really important, I think, that you have, depending how many coaches you have, and some teams have more than others, but that you have regular meetings together, you know, adult and adult, that before, you know, you start working with students, that you really have it together. You've worked things out with one another. You've scheduled out what the practice session is going to be from start to end, you know, what your goals are going to be, and you continue to assess with one another. A very important thing with that will come, how are we going to handle disagreements? When we disagree with each other. And disagreements are great. They're awesome because if we all agree all the time, we're going to miss something. You know, it's when we disagree that we can really learn, you know, from one another and find a better way. But how are we going to handle that? You know, and probably the worst thing that could ever happen is if two coaches disagree and they put the students in the middle, or a student in the middle, and that sometimes happens. That just goes to show, I think, that you really don't have a structure that doesn't quite work.
Yeah, I would agree. You don't want your students in the middle. Now, there are also levels of agreements. If there's a slight disagreement about strategy, sometimes that may be the one time when I think it may be helpful. Certainly, I know I've done it with the woman that I used to coach with, where you model out how you work that out between you. Sometimes you can do that, but you have to have planned to do that as well. We're not saying that you should never disagree. There are intellectual disagreements that you can have that can be valuable to your students as you play it out, as long as you've structured it. But I think you never want them in the middle on disciplinary or on anything emotional. It doesn't belong there. Take it someplace else.
Yeah. One issue that we've heard a bit about is, who's responsible for what, and that goes with the communication part of it. Whatever works for your program works for your program, and however you want to do it. We get it down pretty succinct. Where actually we do have job descriptions and who's responsible for what, and of course there is crossover of certain things. But that has really helped us. Our particular program has helped us a lot to make sure that we're on the same page. So people know what I'm doing. We know what the attorney coach is doing, and really, in many situations, I would assume that your teacher coach is the one who very much can take these complex materials and instructional materials and help, meet the needs of, your students. Some that have certain strengths, some have limitations. Your attorney coaches are going to be more of your content-oriented professionals. They know the what, and they know the how. And the why, and that needs to be expressed out. And I think that good relationship between attorney coach and teacher coach can deliver that instruction in partnership. Do you agree? Okay. Communication, and Ellen, was very strong, about this, that because we have diverse coaching, we have diverse backgrounds. We really need to continue to communicate with each other. Again, the expectations are knowledge, and coaches can, as we have listed on the bottom there, together. The more that some teacher coaches will be working with kids all day long. The attorney coach comes in and gets a whole new, fresh perspective of that student in that particular situation, can actually offer very good information to the teacher coach. And the same thing, about law and school policy and procedures. Ellen?
And you need to be aware that sometimes it's nice to have a different or a second set of eyes, and sometimes it comes from the most unexpected sources. One year we had, one of our teams was very young, predominantly male, and almost all sophomores. And they were having a terrible time, one small group of them working together. And one day I realized something, and the teacher coach had never seen it, but I realized it because I had a child who was who was a little bit older, who had walked in to wait for me one day and had made an offhanded remark at dinner about what she'd seen. And I suddenly realized what the bulk of our problem was. And we moved one of the female seniors to the other team. And that was the end of the problem. But, it comes from unexpected sources. It wasn't because I was brilliant. It was because my daughter had noticed something and made a comment about it at dinner, Solved the whole problem. And we've been trying to solve that problem forever. So you don't know where your sources are going to be, and you don't know what a different set of eyes is going to see. Once, when I didn't have information I would have normally liked, I handed our trial notebook to, it was in an early stage, to a student who apparently had ADHD, but I did not yet realize it, and asked him to organize it. And to everybody's shock, he did. Only because I didn't know not to, and I would never have done it deliberately. Okay, we all learned something valuable, which is this kid was capable of a little bit more than everybody was giving him credit for. A different set of eyes is sort of fun sometimes. And sometimes you'll have an attorney coach who may know some of the kids. We don't think about this, I came in coaching knowing the first team I coached, a lot of the kids I had known since they were small because of the community I live in and the age of my own children. Sometimes you can get a different perspective because I had seen those kids, and I probably knew their parents better than the teacher did. So I knew certain things that were going on at home that she didn't. So don't assume necessarily that your attorney coach doesn't have some information you don't.
And we found that as well. We have just an awesome female attorney coach. She's very young, and she's been working with one of our students who has a very serious issue at home that was not revealed to anybody, but because of the relationship she has with that young fella, we were able to then get him the help that he needed. Those of you, you know this, that mock trial is the longest season of any high school co-curricular. And you think of it, and I coach football as well, that's 2 months. Football's 2 months. This ends up being 5 months. And it's hard work. There's no marching bands, you know, there's no cheerleaders, those kinds of things. And it makes you wonder, you know, why some of the kids, you know, would even do this, you know. And you have a one-shot deal. You know, regional, and only one from regional advances, you know, and so, you know, respecting what the kids are doing and what you as coaches are doing, you know, for those 5 months is amazing. So the kids need to understand, especially new ones coming in, what this is about, you know, before they make this commitment. That it is going to take a lot of time. It's going to take an awful lot of effort. You know, it sounds kind of sexy, mock trial, and be an attorney or be a witness, but my God, it takes a very, very, very hard work, and those of you who are doing that know exactly what we're talking about. And I don't think this needs to be said, but if someone loses their interest, or they've just kind of had enough, or there's other things in the way, sometimes it might be church, a family issue, or whatever, you know, don't try to coerce them to stay. You know, let them go. Responsibility and liability, we've had this issue, and very sad to say. We want to do the best, and it's very easy when you're going 5 months with kids to get very close to them. And you have to be careful of that as adults, and well-meaning adults. Working with teens, and teens are children. They're not young adults. They're teenagers, they're